mistakes have been put on the public stage. Other people's mistakes aren't. And there are many things that are good, but good news doesn't sell papers, and bad Fergie sells.
She had been working for Soho House since at least 2005.
She was one of my Deal or No Deal girls that were, she was a caddy for all of my celebrities.
When she started on Suits and she befriended Jessica Mulrooney, her status changed.
What if the palace isn't holding its breath over what Meghan might say, but over the chance she gets defined before she can speak? That flip changes the whole chessboard. Late October, word leaked that Meghan's production company quietly trademarked the phrase Sussex Survivor across 3 continents. Insiders claim it's the working title for a memoir pitched as the antidote to years of royal silence. She's preparing to drop her own origin story the moment outside voices grow too loud. The problem? Sources inside Penguin Random House say the manuscript still has gaping holes, dates that don't line up, names left blank, entire weekends in the Caribbean that read like photocopies redacted by a shredder. Editors want those blanks filled before they cut a rumored $20 million check, and the clock is ticking against someone else filling them first. Enter Sarah Ferguson. Same battlefield, older scars. While Meghan races to rewrite her past, Fergie is already under contract to publish one. Staffers who handled Fergie's rejected Tea and Sympathy podcast recall a shelved episode titled When Mentees Go Rogue, recorded days after Spotify canceled Meghan's archetypes. Friends say Fergie never uttered Meghan's name, yet the subtext was so thick the legal team stamped it "Do Not Air." The tape still exists, and industry chatter claims the ghostwriter who once polished Diana's posthumous retrospectives has now stitched that audio into a narrative outline, 80% finished, 1 million-word mountain of receipts. All of this sits in an encrypted folder nicknamed the Windsor File, held by an offshore LLC that wired Fergie a $1.2 million advance in December. The twist? The same shell company once bankrolled a Vanity Fair special that exposed Andrew's weekend party logs 15 years ago. If those logs resurface, time-stamped name by name, they don't just burn Meghan's timeline, they torch the entire fairy tale accident brand she's trademarked for future earnings. So the palace isn't worried about a scandal. It's worried about 2 competing scandals landing in the same news cycle, one curated, one carnivorous, and only one can survive the headline graveyard. But to understand why Fergie's manuscript feels inevitable, you have to rewind to the moment both women lost the same golden streaming deal and why only one of them walked away with the raw footage. Spotify didn't just cancel 2 shows in 2023, it buried 2 opposing playbooks for staying relevant. Meghan's Archetypes died first, 13 episodes, $18 million spent, ad sales team still complaining the audio felt like TED Talks with grievances. Fergie's pilot, recorded in the same London studio 3 weeks later, never even made the schedule. Staffers say the working title was Tea and Sympathy, a cozy chatcast that sounded harmless, until episode 4, when Fergie brought up the girl who used my Duchess handbook as a boarding pass. Producers pressed pause. Legal asked for names. Fergie smiled and said, "Let's keep it medieval." The tape vanished from the upload queue, but the transcript didn't. Here's the kicker. Spotify owns both reels. That means one company holds 2 confessionals, one polished, one off the cuff, locked behind the same non-disclosure bundle. Employees gossip that the streaming giant has quietly shopped the combined archive to 3 documentary houses for a 7-figure licensing fee, banking on a bidding war once either woman goes public. The first to speak becomes the star. The second becomes the bonus episode. Meanwhile, each ex-host is scrambling to control the narrative before the archive leaks. Meghan's team trademarked Sussex Survivor to frame any future audio as empowerment, not damage control. Fergie, savvy from decades of tabloid combat, took the opposite route. She sold her silence up front, pocketed the offshore advance, and left the explosive files in a ghostwriter's vault, knowing curiosity grows louder than any single headline. The palace watched this unfold like a slow-motion car crash. Courtiers worry that if Spotify drops the raw reels during a royal tour, or worse, the night before Charles's coronation anniversary, the firm gets sideswiped by questions no press officer can deflect. Who introduced whom at Soho House, which yacht guest lists were doctored, and why both women needed the same streaming platform to launder their pasts. And somewhere in California, Meghan's producers are rumored to have offered Spotify a counterbuy. Pull Fergie's tapes entirely, and the Sussexes will return for a reunion season at half the original fee. Spotify hasn't answered, yet, but the standoff proves one thing: whoever owns the microphone last gets to write the epilogue. Still, microphones are useless without an audience, and the audience only shows up when the guest list is shocking enough to trend. Which is why the real story starts with a membership audit that erased 14 names from Soho House records overnight, and the 2 ghost emails that trace back to a Toronto zip code Meghan once called home. Soho House keeps 2 ledgers, the glossy roster members brag about, and the shadow spreadsheet only 3 executives can open. In March 2024, the shadow one shrank. An internal global compliance sweep deleted 14 lifetime accounts tied to post-MeToo lawsuits and Epstein subpoenas. Except deletions don't leave vacuum sounds, they leave gaps big enough to read. Cyber sleuths on the data viz forum Ocentopia overlapped the purge dates with public postcodes and found 2 defunct email handles, tmarkle.toronto and mm.windsorguest, both registered to the same King Street address Meghan rented during her Suits years. The handles stopped logging in at 3:14 GMT, 48 hours before the purge announcement. After that, nothing. No forwarding address, no bounce backs, just digital gravestones. Members who were in the Toronto rooftop bar that night recall a quiet audit, staff collecting phones, bartenders swapping iPads for old-school order pads, security walking the floor with RFID wands. One server, since laid off, says a manager whispered, "House rules. If their name hits a British newspaper, they never existed here." By sunrise, every photo wall with Polaroids from 2009 to 2016 looked thinner. Gaps where Meghan's arm-around shots with billionaires used to hang now show abstract art. Even the cocktail menu lost the Markle Mojito, renamed Mystic Muddle overnight. Why the sudden hygiene? Lawyers for Soho House's parent company filed a duty to delete memo in Delaware court, arguing historic guest data could be subpoenaed under Virginia Giuffre's lingering civil track. Scrub now, answer later. But scrubbing leaves breadcrumbs. Receipts still hit credit card processors, and those don't vanish. A forensic accountant scrolling through Discover metadata found 3 charges from July 2012 labeled Soho House Yacht Charter, Split Cabin. Cardholder, Rachel M.W. Billing zip 92108, the same San Diego postal code Meghan used for her first passport renewal. The amounts: $18,400, $20,000, $31,750, tips included. Palace clerks caught wind when a Red Top reporter requested comment on yacht hospitality and named the wrong prince. Charles's private secretary rang Soho House CEO Nick Jones within the hour. Jones promised full cooperation, then caught the next plane to LA for what his Instagram called creative sabbatical. He hasn't posted since. Meanwhile, the membership committee quietly upgraded its non-disclosure clause. Breach penalty jumped from $250,000 to $1 million plus legal costs, enough to keep even billionaires quiet. Yet the greatest risk isn't what was deleted, it's what can't be: printed collateral. Fergie, ever the collector, reportedly owns a 2011 welcome brochure autographed by the girls on a Caribbean flotilla. Meghan's signature smack beside a note that reads, "Thanks for the invitation, Marcus." If that single page scans its way into a chapter heading, the entire purge becomes evidence of a cover-up, not routine spring cleaning. And cover-ups make better headlines than yacht gossip ever could. But yachts are only half the ledger. The other half lists house guests who never slept on boats. Guests whose names now sit inside Andrew's plea trade papers, waiting for a prosecutor bold enough to connect weekend parties to parliamentary passports. In July 2024, a brown envelope arrived at the London offices of the Crown Prosecution Service. 42 photocopies, stapled, no return address. Across the top ran the header, Caribbean Flotilla, Guest Manifest 2009 to 2012. Each page split names into 2 columns, onboard accommodation and shore plus ones. Halfway down page 7, under the date 18 Aug 2011, the name Meghan R. Markle appears 3 times, never in the same ink, never the same cabin number. Beside the final entry, someone scribbled +1, Fergie's intro. That tiny parenthesis is why Palace phones lit up. The yacht in question, Sea Ghislaine, belonged to a shell trust later traced back to Epstein's Caribbean fleet. Andrew's legal team had the same manifest, they just hoped it stayed buried. When Virginia Giuffre's civil lawyers requested all hospitality logs, Andrew's aides offered a redacted bundle, accidentally leaving metadata that showed 4 versions of the same PDF. Version 1 included Meghan, Marcus Anderson, and a Sarah Ferg notation. Version 4 deleted all 3. Digital timestamps prove the scrub happened 36 hours after Meghan's engagement photo hit global front pages. In short, the palace learned the files were radioactive years before the public even asked for them. But copies escape. One crew member kept the original embarkation cards, tiny manila rectangles, hole-punched and strung on a bungee cord like seaside keys. He sold the cord for $8,000 to a tabloid middleman last winter. The cards show Meghan signing in under actress/charity rep one year, model/PR consultant the next. Occupation inflation that mirrors her Soho House bio upgrades. More curious, each card lists an emergency contact. On the earliest, Jessica Mulroney, Toronto. On the latest, HRH request refer to Palace Equerry. That swap, 2011 to 2012, is the smoking breadcrumb. Someone already saw royalty as the next port of call. Fergie's role? She claims she merely made introductions for a friend of a friend. But deckhand WhatsApp chats, backed up to iCloud and duly hacked, remember her hosting a welcome aboard cocktail where she toasted new faces climbing old masts. Eyewitnesses say Meghan laughed, raised her glass, and asked which cabin had the strongest Wi-Fi. Need to update the resume. Hours later, at 2:14 a.m., the ship's SATCOM IP pings a Gmail server. Subject line, future platforms. Sender, R. Markle. Recipient, M. Anderson. The body reads only, keys worked. Next rung. Lawyers insist the manifest proves nothing illegal. Yachts host hundreds of charity fundraisers, and presence isn't participation. Yet federal prosecutors care about patterns, not parties. They now possess a spreadsheet cross-referencing every female guest who boarded both Seagull and Epstein's New Mexico ranch. Meghan appears on only the yacht side, but the overlap is enough to keep her name in the red string board that investigators wheel into quiet rooms. One ex-prosecutor, speaking off-record, put it bluntly, "We're not hunting yacht girls, we're mapping influence ladders. If you show up on 3 separate charters and your net worth doubles within 12 months, that's a rung we measure." Still, the loudest ticking isn't in a Florida courtroom. It's inside Fergie's writing cottage, where the same manifest sits beside a yellow highlighter. She's already underlined the +1 note and annotated the margin. Prologue, the climb begins. If she publishes first, the yacht stops being a rumor and becomes chapter 1 of a sanctioned bestseller, complete with time-stamped receipts the palace can't redact because they're printed in trade paperback. And once the public can hold that evidence in their hands, Meghan's only defense is a competing book pitched as victimhood. One cancels the other, but only one has the signed embarkation cards. Which means the next move isn't on land or sea. It's in whichever inbox receives a finished PDF first. And someone's racing to finish before the other hits send. In December 2023, a single manila folder changed hands inside a beige DOJ conference room in Lower Manhattan. On the cover, non-prosecution agreement draft, Prince Andrew, Duke of York. Inside, 38 pages of bullet points, bank wires, and guest manifests. Page 19 carried a subheading, Social Introductions, Caribbean Flotilla Era. Underneath, a chart titled Leverage Points. Meghan Markle's name appears 3 times, each followed by a bracketed note. Not target, potential witness credibility issue. Prosecutors don't want her, but they'll torch her fairy tale to get to Andrew. The quid pro quo is brutal. Andrew offers 1. Full guest logs for Epstein-hosted voyages. 2. Sworn testimony about who arranged +1 invites. 3. Turnover of encrypted BlackBerry messages, already cracked by FBI Cyberlab. In exchange, he walks on trafficking charges, keeps royal stipend, and avoids U.S. extradition. The logs are the bait, the palace is the fish. But the logs contain more than Andrew's handwriting. They're annotated by staff who cataloged talent brought aboard to keep media investors happy. Meghan's name sits beside initials M.A., widely read as Marcus Anderson, and the cabin designation VIP3, Compt. One prosecutor circled the entry in red and wrote margin notes. Compt equals influence? A question Andrew's lawyers refused to answer. Charles learned the details January 2nd during a secure call with the King's Counsel. Minutes later, he rang Fergie, not to scold, but to schedule tea. Courtiers say the meeting lasted 47 minutes. The only note released to staff reads, "Discuss discretion versus timeline." Read, Charles wants Fergie's book postponed until after the U.S. deal is sealed. Fergie wants assurance Andrew's papers won't redact her own cameo appearances. She reportedly left with a promise of fresh consideration for Princess Beatrice's future royal role, an olive branch that doubles as hush money wrapped in protocol. Yet the bigger threat sits in page 27's footnote. If plea collapses, government reserves right to issue target letters to individuals who facilitated guest access. Facilitate is DOJ speak for anyone who vouched, signed, or escorted. Fergie's handwritten diary, already copied by her ghostwriter, contains an entry dated 17 August 2011. Took new girl to yacht, introduced to captain and prince. She asked if palace has guest Wi-Fi. That line alone could move her from footnote to subject, especially if prosecutors need a British citizen to validate American evidence. Fergie isn't just holding Meghan's past, she's standing in her own blast radius. Andrew's camp floated a contingency: redact every woman who arrived via Celebrity Plus One and reclassify them as private guests. DOJ refused, arguing such edits would gut the plea's credibility. So the final draft, still unsigned, lists Meghan alphabetically between Macpherson, L, and Mandel, Howie. A single misplaced leak of that roster, and the public sees Meghan's name sharing page space with convicted traffickers. No courtroom required. Headlines will do the rest. Inside Buckingham, strategy split hard. William's advisors say, let the papers publish. Truth detonates Sussex brand, sparing us the backlash. Charles clings to diplomacy, fearing collateral damage to Beatrice, Eugenie, even the coronation footage if Andrew's saga re-enters news cycles during the 2025 Australia tour. The Queen Camilla faction quietly backs Fergie's book as a controlled burn, better a civilian exposé than a federal docket. Meanwhile, Meghan's California legal squad filed a preemptive letter to the DOJ, arguing media visibility is not culpability. Prosecutors yawned. They've seen the same motion from every peripheral name. But the letter's real purpose was timing. It forces DOJ to acknowledge receipt, creating a paper trail Meghan can wave later as cooperation if public opinion sours. Bottom line, Andrew's plea is a loaded syringe aimed straight at the monarchy's bloodstream. If he signs, the logs stay sealed, but Fergie's book becomes the only public window, and she can print whatever survives redaction. If the plea collapses, the logs go to trial discovery, and Meghan's name enters testimony transcripts that CNN will read live on air. Either way, someone's reputation becomes the price of Andrew's freedom. And Fergie, notebook in lap, is happy to let the clock run, because every day the DOJ deliberation drags on, her leverage climbs. The second prosecutors ink Andrew's deal, she can market her book as the pages they blacked out. If the deal dies, she can sell it as the pages they didn't want you to see. She wins coming or going, unless Meghan beats her to the microphone. Word slipped out of Penguin Random House on a rainy April morning. A 320-page proposal, titled Sussex Survivor, sat on the executive editor's desk stapled to a non-refundable 1.5M development check. The number everyone whispered about was bigger, $20 million, tied to a 2-book package promising the first-ever royal memoir written without palace censorship. Insiders call it a preemptive warhead. If Meghan's version of events lands before Fergie's, any competing narrative looks like retaliation, not revelation. The catch? The manuscript is riddled with bracketed gaps. Date, name redacted by legal, yacht TBD. Like Swiss cheese dressed up as prose. Editors want those holes filled by September so the Christmas release window stays open. That deadline has sent Meghan's researchers scouring old BlackBerry backups, already wiped, Toronto condo visitor logs, sealed by building management, and Soho House CCTV drives, recycled every 30 days. The only intact source is Jessica Mulroney, still loyal, still bruised from her own 2020 scandal, who reportedly handed over a shoebox of boarding pass stubs and a string of WhatsApp voice notes. Transcribers noticed Mulroney's voice cracks when she mentions the Marcus weekends, but even she can't confirm whether certain yacht manifests list Meghan as passenger or hostess. Without paperwork, the chapter becomes he said, she said, exactly the gray zone publishers begged her to avoid. Marketing, however, already commissioned the cover, a backlit Meghan in monochrome, title embossed in gold foil, tagline screaming, the story they tried to erase. Ad campaigns are scheduled to launch the same week the palace unveils Charles's first state visit to Italy, an overlap insiders swear is coincidence, media planners call strategy. Spotify, still sitting on both women's raw tapes, smelled opportunity and slipped a clause into remaindered contracts. Whichever memoir releases first earns an automatic podcast companion, hosted, produced, and platform exclusive. The streaming giant gets to monetize the fallout either way, but only the winner receives the bonus microphone. Fergie's camp responded within days. Sources close to the Duchess say her own manuscript, tentatively titled The Windsor I Know, is already copy-edited, footnoted, and lawyer-vetted. The holdup is tactical. She's waiting to see whether Meghan plugs her gaps with hard evidence or speculative filler. If Meghan guesses wrong on a single date, Fergie can drop a dated receipt and paint the whole memoir as fiction. One literary agent summed it up. Meghan's book is a high-wire act without a net. Fergie's is a safety harness she hasn't strapped on yet. Financially, the stakes dwarf earlier royal tell-alls. Sussex Survivor carries the largest advance ever offered to a living royal-adjacent figure, eclipsing Obama's 15M and Diana's ghosted 7M combined. Recouping that requires global sales north of 4 million hardbacks. Publishers bank on two things: America's appetite for palace gossip and Britain's curiosity about the woman who upended protocol. But 4 million copies only move if the story feels new, not recycled. That means Meghan must deliver documents nobody has seen, quotes nobody has heard, or admissions nobody expected. Anything less, and the project becomes an expensive rehash of Instagram apologies and Oprah talking points. The pressure is showing. Freelancers hired to fact-check timelines were asked to sign amended NDAs with a startling clause. Reviewer acknowledges that creative truth may differ from literal memory. Veteran editors read that as license to embellish. Lawyers read it as ammunition for libel suits. Either way, the clause proves the manuscript is still fluid, dangerous territory when your main competitor owns primary source diaries and offshore-funded lawyers. Meanwhile, pre-orders have already opened in 28 countries. The ebook placeholder shot to #1 on Amazon's coming soon list within hours, fueled only by a blurry cover mock-up. That ranking is a mirage. Algorithms reward click velocity, not delivered content. Yet it pressures the author to feed the beast before momentum cools. If the September deadline slips, Christmas shelves fill with cookbooks and celebrity fiction. If the book ships half-baked, critics carve it alive and Fergie pounces. So the gamble isn't just literary, it's existential. Publish first, and Meghan frames every future allegation as copycat backlash. Publish late, and the world consumes Fergie's footnotes first, turning Meghan's testimony into damage control. Either way, $20 million hang on who fills the blanks fastest and whether paper trails, hidden in Caribbean servers and palace lockboxes, surface before the printers roll. October 2024. Fergie's Scottish retreat, a converted stable overlooking the River Dee, has become mission control for a ticking manuscript. Staff arrive at dawn, leave after dusk. Courier vans shuttle USB sticks to London twice a week. Locals call it the book camp. Inside, editors flag paragraphs yellow, lawyers highlight them red, and Fergie herself greenlights the final zingers. The only non-negotiable: every claim must be footnoted with a primary source, diary entry, receipt, email metadata, or sworn witness. Result: a 480-page brick subtitled Witness to the Waltz, divided into 3 parts: the climb, the collision, the cost. Publication date circled in pencil, March 3, 2025, the week Charles and Camilla depart for a Commonwealth tour. Palace diaries show that date was cleared 6 months ago. Fergie's team booked it 12. Meghan's side hears the whisper and accelerates. Penguin moves its drop deadline to late November, sacrificing holiday marketing for first-mover advantage. Printers in Germany have been told to hold entire press lines on 48-hour notice. The sprint is brutal. Fact-checkers sleep in shifts, libel counsel demand rewrites at 3 a.m., yet the blank Yacht Weekend pages remain. Last-ditch idea, insert a disclaimer chapter titled The Memory Gap, framing missing dates as institutional amnesia imposed by palace NDAs. Risky, readers may see it as confession of guesswork, but better than leaving Fergie the only one with timestamps. Industry oddsmakers now list 3 possible outcomes. Meghan ships first. Fergie's sales crater, her offshore advance becomes taxable income, and Andrew's plea papers stay sealed under U.S. ongoing investigation clause. Fergie ships first. Meghan's $20 million advance turns into a write-off, Sussex Survivor is pulped, and Spotify releases companion podcast using Fergie's tapes, earning the streamer back its Sussex losses. Both hit within 7 days. Tabloids feast on a chapter-by-chapter boxing match, the palace cancels royal engagements, and Buckingham's press office issues a 4-word statement: "We will not comment." Vegas opened informal bets. Outcome number 3 is the 2-to-1 favorite. Behind the scenes, King Charles proposed a nuclear option: buy both manuscripts and lock them in the royal archives for 50 years. He floated £50 million through a private bank. Penguin countered with a laughter emoji. The offshore LLC holding Fergie's rights never even answered. Charles was reminded the firm hasn't had that kind of liquid cash since 1992. William, told of the offer, shrugged. Let the grenades land. We'll sweep up and look cleaner by comparison. The wild card is legal timing. U.S. prosecutors have set a statutory deadline. If Andrew's plea isn't signed by February 17, 2025, the entire case reverts to open docket, meaning every log, email, and manifest become public evidence. That date sits exactly between Meghan's rushed November launch and Fergie's strategic March drop. If the plea collapses, headlines will drown both memoirs under federal paperwork. Neither woman can control DOJ speed, both are now lobbying invisible players. Meghan via California white shoe lawyers, Fergie through a retired British ambassador who once interned at the State Department. Retailers feel the tremor. Amazon has quietly built separate algorithmic royal expose landing pages, ready to swap featured titles within minutes of whichever book goes live first. Bookshops ordered record quantities of both titles, but with strictly sale or return clauses, an insurance policy that signals industry uncertainty unseen since Harry Potter midnight releases. Paper shortages add another wrinkle. One plant in Finland supplies most U.S.-coded stock. It's booked solid through January. First come, first printed, literally. And then there's the palace's own countdown. The Commonwealth Tour starts March 5. Courtiers drafted 2 briefing books, one if Meghan tops charts, another if Fergie does, because each scenario triggers different questions from foreign press. Camilla's press officer already rehearsed lines about respecting private enterprise. William's team prepared deaf-mute smiles. Charles, ever the meddler, keeps rewriting his opening toast for the Canberra State Dinner, toggling between phrases of family unity and lessons from history, depending on which manuscript leaks first. Fergie, for her part, seems serene. Friends say she gardens every afternoon, digs potatoes while humming show tunes, certain that spring harvest coincides with spring launch. She told one visitor, "Time is a carousel. I just waited for the same horse to come back around." She's done being the palace's punchline. The next punch is hers. Meghan, meanwhile, races the carousel. Editors now work weekends. Designers swap photos for higher resolution shots that prove she was nowhere near certain islands. Yet metadata can place a phone, even if it can't place intent. The final PDF must reach the printer by Thanksgiving, or the Christmas market disappears, and with it, the only window big enough to swallow a $20 million advance. So the world watches 2 calendars, one fixed by a German printing plant, the other by a Scottish octogenarian who gardens while Rome refreshes its browser. Both countdowns end in the same headline space, and only one name can own it. Monday, 3rd March 2025, 001 minute GMT. Kindle servers hiccup, Amazon's front page blinks, and Witness to the Waltz materializes at #1 before London's papers go to bed. Fergie's team pressed publish from a Scottish barn at midnight, eschewing the traditional Tuesday drop. Within minutes, the Look Inside preview shows a crisp photo, a 2011 yacht embarkation card, Meghan's looping signature scrawled beside VIP 3 comp. No palace statement follows, they're asleep. By dawn, BBC Radio leads with Duchess vs. Duchess. Meghan's proposed November release is still 8 months away, an eternity in algorithm years. The aftershock rolls westward. Penguin's emergency Zoom convenes at 2 a.m. EST. Marketing admits pre-order momentum for Sussex Survivor has flatlined. The $20 million gamble is now a write-down unless they counterpunch with fresh revelation. Lawyers warn any hasty release would look reactive and invite direct comparison to Fergie's footnotes. Option 2, cancel and rebrand. Insiders whisper the new working title is Sussex Resilience, framed as reply rather than chronicle, essays on misogyny, media, monarchy. Advance sales would crater, reputation might survive. The board gives them 72 hours to decide. Palace reactions fracture exactly as briefed. Charles lands in Canberra for the Commonwealth tour, steps off the plane into a wall of cameras shouting, "Did you know about the yacht card?" Camilla sticks to the rehearsed line, "We respect private enterprise." William, touring a Glasgow youth centre, grins and says nothing, knowing silence now reads as vindication. Harry, tracked by paparazzi en route to a San Francisco charity summit, is asked if he still believes in the story we fell in love with. He keeps walking, but the clip loops for 6 hours on TikTok, soundtracked by a slowed-down version of Fairy Tale Gone Bad. Meghan's first public move is tactical, an Instagram story, blank background, white text. Truth does not expire, even when told out of sequence. My words are coming. No date, no platform, just 2.4 million likes in an hour. Behind the scenes, her lawyers send a cease and desist, claiming the embarkation card violates her EU data rights. Fergie's counsel responds with a 1998 European court ruling that historical public interest outweighs individual deletion claims, signed, ironically, by the same barrister who once defended Diana's biographer. The letter ends, "We look forward to your client's memoir correcting the record." Financial markets feel the tremor. Penguin's parent stock dips 3% on Frankfurt opening. HarperCollins, holding Fergie's world rights, jumps 5%. Spotify, still owner of both podcast archives, sees subscriber growth spike 1% in 6 hours as listeners binge the shelved Tea and Sympathy pilot now leaked on Reddit. Analysts tag it the Windsor arbitrage. Whoever controls the microphone last wins the valuation. But the deepest ripple is political. 2 U.S. Congresswomen cite the yacht manifest during a hearing on sex trafficking statutes, asking why certain names were redacted from earlier evidence. The DOJ, already under fire for slow-rolling Andrew's plea, confirms an active review of all hospitality logs. If prosecutors need fresh headlines to justify reopening the case, Fergie's footnotes provide ready-made exhibits. Meghan could be subpoenaed not as target, but as material witness. Camera crews waiting on courthouse steps, her narrative hijacked by federal procedure. Inside Montecito, emergency meetings revolve around 3 choices. Accelerate. Dump an unfinished PDF online, claim moral high ground, risk libel. Litigate. Sue Fergie for privacy breach, tie her up in London courts, delay both books. Pivot. Exit the memoir arms race, donate advance to charity, launch a media ethics foundation, concede the past to focus on future production deals. Each carries a poison pill. Acceleration invites courtroom discovery. Litigation keeps the story alive for years. Pivoting looks like surrender and tanks her personal brand built on speaking truth. By nightfall, #Sussex Resilience trends at number 2 worldwide. Manufactured momentum pushed by influencer pods paid 6 figures to drown Witness to the Waltz. But algorithmic carpet bombing can't erase scanned signatures. The yacht card is wallpapered across every tabloid front page. For the first time, Meghan's face shares a split screen with Fergie's, not as fellow royals, but as rival authors, one with receipts, one with rhetoric. And somewhere on the Thames, a barge clock strikes midnight. Fergie pours herself a gin, toasts the river, and murmurs, "Carousel stops when you jump off, darling." She's already drafting the afterword. If the truth wounds, bandage the lie that bled first. The palace, weary of choosing sides, issues its final 4 words at 23:59. No further comment tonight. That silence is the pin officially pulled. The explosion isn't a single book or a single headline. It's the narrative vacuum, now sucking in every rumor, speculation, and half-memory the internet can mine. Meghan's fairy tale scaffolding wobbles under the weight of dated signatures. Fergie's redemption arc solidifies with every sold-out print run. The monarchy braces for a news cycle that will define the rest of Charles's reign. All that's left is the fallout. And fallout doesn't ask who started the story. It simply rearranges the landscape where the next chapter will be written.